back to the L.A.M.E Book Club podcast. My name is Melissa.
I'm Ellie.
And we are very excited to continue our Onyx Storm deep dive. We'll be going through chapters 19 through 24 today. But first, we have a review of the week, and I'm very excited to read it. This comes all the way from Mel Bombino. It says, best pod out there, 5 stars. I've never been a podcast person. I don't enjoy podcasts, and I don't listen to them. We're off to a good start. But I struck gold with this one. I'm a college student reading Onyx Storm right now, and I was looking for a channel on YouTube doing a read-along of the book so I'd have content to watch or listen to while I'm reading. Basically, I'm completely obsessed with the series and wanted to find some creators who are also completely obsessed with the series. I stumbled upon Ellie and Melissa's video of the first 6 chapters of Onyx Storm, and it was perfect. I cannot wait to watch/listen to more episodes, and I'm buying a L.A.M.E Book Club sticker as I type this right now. Thank you, Ellie and Melissa. And thank you, Mel. I love our stickers.
Thanks,
and
Mel
I'm
Bombino.
grateful for that. And the review.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And then tying into this review, if you want to buy a L.A.M E Book Club pod sticker or tote, head on over to lamebookclubpod.com for all of our merch. Takes me a second to get there.
Yeah.
We don't have different like links. It's all the same.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's also,
But
if you follow us
still,
on
it takes
Instagram,
me-
there's a link in our bio.
There is. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
And if you're part of our Patreon, you get 15% off. And on that note, join our Patreon. We're going through Legendary. We are approaching our very last week of that before we head into finale, which means we have our live book club. We get to chat with our listeners. We get to talk about the book. We're going to have some trivia. It's going to be a great time. And last but not least, Patreon shout outs. Thanks to Christy, Madison, and Jenny. Thanks for being here, guys. You ready to jump in? There's no more ados to be had.
I was just about to say, you didn't even ask, but I have no further ados. Let's do it.
Gosh, I just have to preface, I love going through this book. I love everybody's feedback. I love all the character development, the plot development. It's just getting so good, and it just keeps getting better. Every chapter is something to have you sit on the edge of your seat. There's no lulls, and it's just insane. Not read a book like this in a while. It's incredible.
It not only are there no lulls, but the more I read, the farther my jaw hits the floor.
Honestly, it just gets crazier and crazier, and these 6 chapters are no exemption. Chapter 19. Okay, so the Riot of 8, which now includes Mira, is crossing the border at Samara. Of course, Andarna is left behind at Samara for her own safety, and she's throwing a fit. My poor baby.
I know.
She argues that she
baby girl.
I know. She argues that she can burn Venin, so she's more helpful than they'd think, which is true. But Taryn is convinced that it's a phenomenon attributed to Dragon's first fire, which burns the hottest. Taryn also reminds Violet that she has about 12 hours before she'll feel the pain of distance from Andarna. And I think that I forgot about this. Like, I knew, obviously, Taryn and Sigale, they can't be apart, but they're the only ones we are constantly remembering that, they can't be apart. But the dragon from their rider, that's surprising to me.
Well, and also, I think because she's with Taryn, it didn't, don't get me wrong, I didn't forget about Andarna. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't forget about Andarna, but I'm like, well, she's with her dragon, so it didn't even, register that, duh. Like, that makes sense because the other one's not here.
Right. Yeah. Crazy. The riot touches down in Anka, and everyone is on high alert until they realize this area is absolutely not occupied. It is already drained. The dragons I know, this scared me. The dragons take off to surrounding areas to find territory that isn't drained so that they can hunt and such. And the humans follow a map that Kat drew to locate the citrine. They make it to the museum where the citrine is meant to be, and Aura and Violet stand guard. Everything from this point forward has popped off to levels that I cannot even fathom. My heart reading
this entire scene was not on my bingo card. Like, everything that is about to happen, again, when I was not lying when I said my jaw just continued. Yeah.
That I truly was like, I'm not reading this right. This is a fever dream. What am I seeing? I'm being delusional.
I must have gotten a broken copy of this book because I don't think this is possibly how Rebecca could have
made
written
it into the edit. Okay, so Violet and Aura are standing guard. Everything is going to be fine as long as no one wields, so as not to attract venom to magic, right? Like moths to a flame.
Truly, at this point,
Easy
it's like,
enough.
as long as... Well, no. When it's like, as long as we don't wield, we'll be fine. I'm like, who is going to wield? It's like, this
exactly.
Is setting it up too perfectly to just go A-okay, which nothing ever does. So...
Exactly. So Mira finds the citrine, which again, I was like, way too easy. But things, of course, go awry when a door creaks open and Aura flips the flip out and sends her fire to burn whatever the heck was coming out of that door, which was a bold move for not knowing what you were throwing flames at. As a second year.
Well, okay, no, I think she's a third year, I think. Well, it doesn't matter. Here's my thing.
It's a third year.
I understand, like, they are outside of the wards. You never know where the Venin are going to be. I truly, truly get being nervous and skittish. Like, I don't blame her for that at all. What I do blame her for, though, is not thinking, like, being scared, understanding, like, yeah, you need to, like, fight the Venin, having that on one side of your brain, 100%. But on the other side, what they literally just said, like, if that isn't a Venin,
yeah,
you are literally drawing them to you by using your signet.
The entire mission, the entire team.
So
if
just
that wasn't
and like
Venin.
I mean, truly, like, just it's as if, you know what? It's really, this might be a terrible example, but it's what I think of. It's almost like being a cop. Like, you're looking for someone, you see someone open. You're not supposed to shoot before anything. Like, you're supposed to wait, because we know Venin are fast. We know, but like, you have 3 seconds before you like to register that is a Venin. Now I need to fight. They're already here. There doesn't matter if I use my signet. But she didn't even take half a second to be like, let me double check real quick. They're not that fast.
Honestly, an honest mistake, but I'm not going to give Aura the pass of honest mistake because I don't like her. So moving forward, turns out a shocking turn of events. It's not a Venin, but Grady. And the short of it is, Aura burns him alive. I was actually speechless. Like, I just was like, okay.
I could not believe he was dead. That's where I was like, this must have been
so fast.
A mistake. Like,
a misprint. I loved it. Something happened.
I loved it. I was great. I'm grateful that, because it keeps us on our toes. It keeps the book interesting. And I'm glad that Rebecca kills characters. Like, as much as I'm not glad, I am glad, because it does make it more interesting to read about.
Yeah.
But it was just so sudden and so fast that I was like,
oh my gosh. But also just the fact
maybe they just think he's dead.
I know. And I didn't believe that he was necessarily dead. I was like, they're going to put him out, because they were trying to put him out. Yeah. And I thought, they'll put him out, and then this will be a big haha. You need to humble yourself. No. He straight up died within a sentence. Gone. He is dead. And then I'm like ready to just LOL at Aura for being the worst, and now really proving to everyone that she's the worst. She was so pompous, and now she's the biggest screw up. But then I didn't get that chance to have my like, wow, haha, you get your just desserts, because as the fire she casted spreads from home to home, burning the entire city, it also attracted Wyvern, who came down and pierced Aura through the spine. So now she's dead, and like, we can't laugh at that. We can't be happy about that.
Well,
but I'm also not saying anyone deserved it.
That
but
might
I'm also
be
not
her
saying
just desserts.
One might argue. I'm not saying it wasn't a nice feeling to read it. I'm not saying anything at all.
I'm just not going to talk about it.
Right. And this was a small note. I don't know. I'm just being paranoid as always. But Henson was a little bit sus to me during this, because Violet made note that like Aura just died in front of them, and they were just like, all right, back to it, huh?
Well,
I was like, okay.
It didn't strike me as sus at all. It was like, that's what you kind of have
like
to do.
Like a writer's training. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I think that is the reason why they are so okay with people dying during your 3 years at Bezgaeth, because it's gonna happen. And the sooner you get used to it, the more likely you are to survive.
Right.
Moving forward.
I think I'm just so trained being in Violet's mind that anything less than a full empathetic, like, oh my gosh, this just happened, this is crazy, I'm like, so are you a bad?
Yeah. Are you a bad, or are you just not empathetic here?
Yeah. Okay.
It's hard to tell sometimes.
Taryn scoops up Violet and Xaden together, lightweight against his will, which I'm like, you know and trust both. Well, not so much trust Xaden at this point, but you know them both. You can pick them up. It's life and death. But he was like,
Yeah.
And Sigale fights off the remaining wyvern. They make it back to the fortress at Samara, and Mira approaches Violet with the citrine saying, I got there first. And this is important to note because of the fact that she, being the one who was there first, also found a note left for Violet from Theophany saying, ask me for the answers you seek, and I'm capable of taking you whenever I want. Shivers down my spine. Yeah.
I hate her. Hate
it. Chapter 20. Poor Violet is getting burnt out, but not like the signet burnt out, more just like real life burnt out, like the rest of us on an average work week. She is doing the most every day of the week and is exhausted, but she does have an inclination as to where her dad was going in his hypothesis, and it had to do with his feathertail research. This is a half mark on my bingo card for this book.
Yep.
The quest squad needs a new commander since Grady is Ash, and Riddick is begging. I know, I was like, is it too soon? But
no, it's not. It's appropriate.
Riddick is begging to be considered to be added to the squad, which we are 100%. Well, I was 100% for this. Were you 100% for this?
I mean, I was certainly not against it. I think I didn't really chalk much up to him because, like, how he kept begging earlier, I was like, I mean, typical Riddick, like, nothing's gonna happen. But I was not like, no, when he continued to ask and there potentially was spots available. Like,
yeah,
but
yeah. Well, and I really liked how he really pled his case to Violet.
Oh, I know. That was sweet. Pled.
Mm-hmm.
Pled.
His case to Violet. Literary analysis with Melissa and Ellie. But my heart ripped open when he's like, you guys act like my sense of humor somehow lessens my ability to show up for our squad.
I know.
I guess I have been doing that. I don't know.
Haven't we? Unknowingly, subconsciously, we have, Riddick, and I apologize.
And he's always been the comedic relief, but dang it, if he's not also someone who crossed the parapet, passed through the gauntlet, got bonded with the dragon. He's a powerful rider. Yeah. So that broke my heart.
And we know that he's been working on his he's really honed his signet. Like,
he has.
He's one of the most powerful ice wielder. So sorry.
Oh my gosh. No, you're good. But yes, because ice wielding, if you would have asked me in the beginning of the book, not impressive. Lightweight, no reaction. No.
I think only because it was described as being one of the most, like, ice and fire were one of the more common signets. Yeah. So I foolishly took that to mean that it's less powerful, which isn't the case. It just means it's more often something that one manifests. It doesn't mean that it can't be honed and equally as deadly as some of the other ones, but that was my personal bias that I let get in the way.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so used to, or maybe we are so used to seeing that in kind of like the superhero movies, like, not to be ridiculous, but Frozone. Or like Bobby and X-Men. Like, you see a lot of ice wielders, water wielders, that kind of thing. And so it's not as impressive because it's a tale as old as time. But you don't see like intrinsic, like mind readers so often. So that's something where maybe I have a bias towards that signet. It's like,
it's just how it's written though too. Because we also get other books and other stories where there just isn't other, like, your power is fire or your power is like think autumn Akatar, we think autumn court, that's default fire, winter default ice, and there's never anything in there that talks about them being less powerful. It's just different. Granted, Rhys is the most powerful High Lord, and they do talk about that, so I think just by proxy you assume that everyone, I mean, they are less powerful, but I think that kind of makes their power seem less powerful too. That's not always the case, but I don't know. I just think it's also how it's written. And my subconscious bias just kind of allowed me to think that it was a lesser signet, even though it wasn't at all, which I'm glad I'm not glad I did that, but I'm glad that I think Rebecca understood that if that wasn't even intentional initially, so that she could have a moment like this, but like what we're about to get into with how Riddick was talking about honing his signet and everything.
Where we don't take, like, we kind of count him as the underdog.
Yeah.
So
we do.
cool.
We count him out unintentionally.
Right. But lest we not, because Riddick then reveals he's been spending time on his signet and he can now freeze fruit. But also, he could potentially, when they started with that, I was like, that's because I had to read that 3 times. I was like, he froze the orange and we're impressed. Seems like not something to be impressed about, but it alluded to the fact.
You've seen Xaden wield, and this is what impressed you?
And that got you? Okay. But it alluded to the fact that he could potentially freeze water in someone's body. And
that's
that
wild.
He is someone who can draw water from, kind of like Frozone. He can draw water from the air. There is no water in this air. So he's a rarity amongst ice wielders. And again, I'm feeling a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender influence in this book. And I don't know if this is like she was. If I ever meet her, I'd really want to ask. But there's an episode, spoiler alert for Avatar, I guess. But there's an episode where Katara, who's a water bender, learns that she can bend blood in someone's body. And that really gave a lot of like a turn of events that kind of in a similar way to me here.
Yeah.
So anyways, Kat is waiting upon invitation from Violet to join this meeting. Violet grabs Riddick and brings him with her, noting in her mind her father's words that are, only go to war with those you trust implicitly. And that gave me pause. Cause for suspicion. Riddick is someone I trust with my life thus far.
Exactly.
But saying it so blatantly like that makes me wonder if we should. And again, I am Vincini in The Princess Bride saying, you say I should trust you, so clearly I can't drink the wine in front of me.
I'm actually glad you pointed that out, because I did not think that, which is ironic with how skeptical I usually am about every person and everything in every book I ever read. I was like, okay, Riddick is going to be on the quest squad. We trust Riddick.
Yeah. The meeting is so badass that I don't even feel like a summary would do it justice, but I try anyways. Violet puts Markham in his place by telling him that he has the credibility of a drunkard and integrity of a rat. I want that on a shirt.
I love that. I want that on a shirt so bad. When she said, eyeball to eyeball, the man that was supposed to be her mentor, the king of scribes, if you will, that he had the integrity of a rat, and something about her just calling him a rat sent me. I loved it.
I really do love when people use rats in examples. I love it. Yeah. Okay, she puts Atos in his place, Atos Sr., by saying that he was like, I speak with the authority of Melgren here, and she's like, I speak with the authority of Taryn and Darna and the entire Empyrean. And chills.
Sit down, little boy.
Sit down. She puts Halden in his place by being so different from the girl that he once knew that he doesn't even recognize her anymore. And that felt good too. Then
Ayo.
she ditches the old dumb squad that they're trying to put back on her, and she gets the one she wants, which is Xaden, Mira, Riddick, Kat, Kat's guard, who is Drake, Dane, and Halden.
Which I know Halden was just a necessity, not someone she wanted. But I just want to say this. There is a quote on page 259 from this chapter that I highlighted because I loved it so much, because Violet is the leader of the squad now, since Grady is, as Ellie so delicately put, Ash. And the quote is, I speak in my father's stead, Halden bites out through gritted teeth. Right, because he's the one I defer to. Xaden's gaze swings to me. When would you like to go? Loved it. We love Xaden's.
Love that.
I love when he's submissive to Violet.
I know. He's only tenderhearted. I think, isn't that just like every girl wants, like a guy that is so, like, you know, the bad boy, but he's good for her, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And that, if
so
that's
cute.
not Xaden, I don't know what is.
So cute. The Scenarium is throwing a fit, though, about Xaden leaving, although I'm confused. I am confusion. They already agreed last time to him being on the quest squad, no? So why are we like, but he can't go now, he's a professor. What's happening?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I get that. I do think it was probably just an excuse, but I mean, I do understand. The boy has classes and responsibility. He didn't the last time. So I understand them being like, you
they're
can't
also
just take
being
someone.
dumb. Literally
No,
for the sole reason being Sigale and Taryn can't be apart. So why are we playing this game for the nth time? It's ridiculous. The dragons dictate.
It's because, again, like we said in the last episode, it is a pee-pee measuring contest. They are doing their darndest to add inches, and it's not working.
To add inches. Okay. So, ladies and gents, page 177, we have the first mention of the concern with Xaden leaving about there being no heir to Tyrrendor. And a small mention, but one that I've already been suspicious about because I've been seeing theories around that Violet will end up pregnant before the series is over. So something to note, something to keep in mind.
Oof.
Yeah. You don't mention an heir for nothing, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, exactly. So, and especially with how many times that it has been referenced about them getting married already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Duchess, you don't just, the last name, yeah.
Yeah, you don't casually throw these things around, Rebecca. You just don't.
My heart held on. Oh, boy. So, have you seen Lilo and Stitch? Of course you have. You know when Pleads like, hold everything. That's how I feel.
Was pretty good impression.
Thank you.
Like, almost embarrassingly good.
Hey.
Like, that, like, you've practiced is what I mean.
That's actually the first time that's ever come out of my mouth, I swear.
No way. Wow,
yeah,
you're
I'm just
talented.
a natural Pleakley. Call me a one-eyed alien. So the meeting ends. Violet gets everything she wants, and Xaden pulls rank, and it's a whole thing. Here's where the hold it comes in. Afterwards, Mira says, Drake Cordella, Touquette's tall, handsome guard. He's part of the Nightwing drift, says Mira, and he gives her a cocky smile, which in my mind has sealed the deal. They're going to be together.
Oh my gosh.
Then, yeah.
Keep going.
Okay, but then she knees him in the groin, and that is where my doubt settled in. So I'm like, it's a 50-50 right now. You're sold?
The kneeing in the groin? No, the kneeing in the groin nailed it in the coffin for me because I'm like, this is going to be an enemies to lovers situation. Yeah. Because if we know anything about Mira, she needs someone who's strong. Like, she's too strong. She can't be with a doormat. She's not going to be happy about that. She needs, honestly, someone similar to Xaden in the sense that, like, he is his own person. He respects authority or commands authority and everything, but he is different with her, and she needs someone like that too. And granted, we don't know anything about Drake, so I'm not going to sit here and say that that's who he is. But the banter and the sparring,
the banter's already there.
It's already there. The like sassy little smile, the fact that he's a high-ranking flyer, and this is just a side note. Honestly, is something that I didn't think about until literally just now. But we know that in the folklore or like the legend, I don't really remember.
Yeah.
Yes, the three siblings. Like the one is the Venin, one was the fly ended up being a flyer. Yeah, the other one was a rider. I think it's pretty in my mind sealed that the Sorengale siblings are like a modern day representation of these three, and that Violet is obviously the flyer. I really think Brennan is a bad, and so he in my mind is the Venin, which means somehow Mira has to be a flyer. And the fact, if her ending up with a flyer, I certainly don't want to say like Teeny dying or anything because that would kill Mira, but maybe it's a flyer in the sense that like she bonds a Griffin in addition to her dragon somehow.
Hold on, your theory is causing me to have a theory, but we can't get to the don't forget about this. Bring this back up as soon as we cross the ocean, okay? The quest squad is officially off. Check out, here it is. Check out Riddick's Quest Squad playlist. It's on Spotify. We will link it in our Instagram by the time that this comes out. Guys, it is hilarious. It's so like funny. A college frat boys like playlist it's so funny.
Riddick on his JBL speaker on the back of Atrum playing
That's what it is. Yeah. Broken also, JBL speaker.
I love the internet most of the time, and I love that we ran with it, and like someone had multiple people now, I've seen multiple playlists have had the thought about this, but this was brought to my attention originally on our Discord. So if you are a Patreon member, that is one of the benefits. But the like a couple of links, and then I went on my own and like found some more. But man, it is so funny. And I also love that the name Quest Squad has stuck, and like they're all referring to it as the Quest Squad, unironically.
I think it's so cute. I love it.
I know.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So they land at Takaros' palace for the night, first and foremost. And that's in Paromiel, correct? I get really lost sometimes. I have to keep referencing the map.
Yeah. No, it's Corden.
It's Corden.
Okay. Yeah, he's in Corden.
Yeah. And Indarna notes how she loves the warm weather. And this is the second, if not third time that she's made note of this. And it's cause to consider if that points to where her kind's breeding grounds are, somewhere really warm.
Or if not breeding grounds, like where they went to.
Where they went.
Like, because as a breed, they prefer warmer weather, which absolutely highlighted that. You know it. And again, that's not that's, I wouldn't even go so far as to say subtle. That is a very red flag foreshadow.
Yeah.
IMO.
Halden and his redheaded guard. Oh my gosh.
This made
we
me
cannot
cackle. we absolutely cackle.
I have to say this respectfully. Halden and his redheaded guard are being carried in baskets by griffins. The mental picture that was placed in my head is ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous.
To make matters worse, the mental picture Rebecca gave us of them crawling out of the baskets, getting snagged, ripping off your like buckle because you're just stuck on it. It was so dirty. Rebecca, that was so mean. I loved it. Such an edge.
Rebecca, that was so mean. No, I know. And the Prince of Navarre, like not even just some rando in a basket, which they
straight up someone with a
it's
complex.
Obviously on purpose. I know.
Getting stuck in this basket.
It's clearly on purpose. It's not like an accident. I know she did that very pointedly,
Melissa,
which makes me love her more.
We talk about like when we finally see the book to TV adaptation, what scenes we want to see. I skip all of it. I just want to see this. I want to see him like, because we all get our freaking jean belt loops snagged on a door handle, or like get our backpacks caught in a door, that kind of thing, hair in a car door. Seeing him get snagged on this wicker basket, not being able to get out, his redheaded girlfriend spilling it. This is just too much for me. I thought it was such an ick. I thought it was so funny.
The mess that it is needs a spot on television. Michael B. Jordan, hear me, please. Do not add any creative direction to this. Rebecca wrote it perfectly. Leave it as is.
No notes.
No notes. Just create this the way that it is.
So Takaros gets into a sort of like pecking order spat with Xaden and Halden, and Xaden uses it to his advantage because he's smarty smart. He pushes Halden to define what role he's assuming while he's part of the quest squad, and to not usurp his own command. And because he wants to stay in leadership, Halden insists that he doesn't rank as professor here because professor would outrank what he would be as a student, I guess. I don't know. So it was so devious. Xaden asks him to repeat it a couple times, and Halden is spitting that he does not outrank him. He is not a professor here. Xaden is not a professor. You're not a professor. So Xaden says, okay, thanks, and takes Violet into his room so that they can, quote unquote, sleep.
Yeah.
Also, worth noting, maybe, at this point I wrote maybe, Takaros pointedly says that he wants Violet to join his court again. He's like, the one that got away, you know, that offer still stands. You can join my court. And she's like, my response still stands. I don't want to join.
Yeah.
So, here's where things get crazy. Xaden and Violet are together in his room, and she thinks, it feels so good to be in his arms. And Xaden says, because it is. And Violet says,
know.
I didn't say that out loud. She questions if his signet is growing, and that seems to be a similar theme considering Riddick's developing his signet. But can his reading intentions transfer?
No.
To reading the mind?
Who knows? Who knows?
Right.
But I will die on the hill that this is the foreshadow for him manifesting his signet or third signet, and if not already having one, and Rebecca is using misdirection as a Monsters University
I want this
quote.
too, but I did see a comment from someone saying, no, Rebecca has said in a previous interview, like, she has to draw a line somewhere, so they really don't think that this is a third signet. And I thought, maybe, but this really seems like a third signet after this specific conversation and her pointing to, oh, your signet is growing. I don't think it's going to be that simple. And I think Rebecca specifically added, I think your signet is growing for the misdirection, so that we'd think,
exactly,
oh, it is that simple. It's not. It can't be.
Yeah.
A knock at the door stops all monkey biz, and Takaros is there to insist that they don't make Halden fly in a basket. And I was dead.
I was mad. I'm like, Takaros, don't take my joy. This is my joy.
This is all I have. We're in war, and this is all I can laugh at. He says he can't fly in a basket like goods and products, and that sent me.
I know.
Takaros says that he'll take Halden by ship, boo, and meet them at his estate on the northern coast. He also reminds them that they will lose their abilities when they cross the ocean, and I don't know why this didn't click for me until just now when he said it. Like, they've been talking about it, but I was like, yeah, next. And then it hit me. You mean they can't manifest? They can't channel their signet?
Mm-mm.
What do you mean?
Which also means they don't have a bond. They can't talk to their dragons. They can't talk to each other. Like, they are isolated. They are cut off. And I don't think it wasn't until we're about to get to it, but like they get to the island that it really like dawned on me, like just how dependent they are on magic for everyday life. Because I only think of magic as them manifesting their signet, but it actually is so much more than that. And I didn't realize how much it is.
Yeah, me either.
Touches everything. Like,
well, and to be honest, when he said, "Hey, just so you know, you won't have your like powers," I didn't consider that they would lose a bond, because that to me wasn't a magical thing, but it is.
Exactly.
That falls under the category of magic. Them being able to talk to each other falls under magic, and that was shocking to me. I just couldn't even believe that they lost it, but we'll get to that. Lastly, Takaros mentions that King Cortland loves rarities, so he advises them, do not wander from each other and do not make a deal with him that you cannot keep, which screams to me they're going to make a deal with him that they cannot keep.
I'm glad that I figured you were going to talk about this, but I have the exact quote highlighted and I want to read it because I feel like it's very like intentional. He says, Takaros, a word to the wise, he glances between us. I may collect rarities, but King Cortland absconds with them. Do not wander off from each other. Do not advertise what a rare jewel you are, which I'm assuming he's talking to Violet at that point. And at all costs, do not make a deal you cannot keep. So now I'm like, what kind of deal is going to have to be made? I am actually nervous now for them going to Deverelli and whatever is about to go down in this next chapter or two.
Yeah. So once the squad crosses the ocean the next day, it is a sobering moment, as we just talked about, when Terrence says that he hadn't realized how dependent they truly are on magic, and even flying seems more strenuous. Worst of all, they lost communications with Sigale and Xaden, and now they're just normies with no bonds. Chapter 22. We start the chapter off with Violet noting how hot it is here. Could it be a coincidence? Could it be an Easter egg? They see the city of Deverelli hidden in the trees, and this shifted everything I pictured for Deverelli, because I was picturing like desert and like white buildings and hot, but the fact that they were in like the woods. What did you picture for Deverelli?
Well, I don't know if I've ever actually gone in. There it is.
Stucco is the word,
I don't know if I've gone in too much detail about this on any previous episode, but we have talked about this because the same goes for character descriptions. You can tell me what a place looks like in a book, and I will ignore it and picture what I want. So that's fair. Don't have any preconceived notions going into this. They've just talked about the Isles and Deverelli and stuff, and so because they talk about the Isles and because I know it's warmer, in my mind, it's like Santorini. And like kind of esque. And I don't care how it is described. That is how I picture it. So
well, I feel like it basically was just also add woods. because the
but
beach
I
was
didn't
like
picture
Greece
any
and
of the
Hawaii.
forest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Which I guess that would be kind of Hawaii-esque.
Mm-hmm.
There's some kind of like woods.
Deverelli laid inside of the woods and that you could see it peeking through the trees. I thought it sounds beautiful. I'd love to go.
It does.
However,
but I didn't really picture it.
That's fair. One of Deverelli's special features is that it is also guarded with huge arrows tipped in metal, very Lord of the Rings style, and they're essentially dragon killers. They prepare to land, and Indarna sees something that piques her hunger, Dolphinum. And what's your take on renaming a familiar species? Because I
love it.
Feelings about this. You love it?
No, I liked it because it was very obvious what we were supposed to visualize without just saying dolphin.
Like, don't you just feel like at this point, let's just say dolphins?
No, because like griffins aren't real. Dragons, we know what they are, but they're not real. Dolphins
Where's
are
the
real.
line, though? Because I guarantee if they called things like dogums dogs, I think you'd have a problem. I'd have a problem. So where do we draw the line here?
They are about to ride horses, and they just call them horses. They don't call them horsem. So there's that, I guess.
There's something there.
I don't know. It didn't bother me. I think also the reason it didn't bother me is because like they have horses in Navarre, so that's something that they were familiar with. This was a new, like, Violet even specifically says like she's only read about them in books, so she's never actually seen them. So in my mind, this is within this fantasy book, this is a fantasy for her, which is why it's a different name. And I don't know, it didn't bother me at all because if anything, I appreciated that she named it something similar to dolphin, so I'm not sitting here trying to guess what she's talking about and imagine it in the movie that I'm watching while reading this.
But it played beautifully. It gave me Lisa Frank. That's how like just wondrous this whole
Lisa
picture
Frank.
was for me. Okay. When they land, chaos ensues as they realize that everyone except Violet and Tarn and Indarna have lost communication. The riders can't speak to their dragons, the flyers can't speak to their griffins, and the dragons can't speak to each other. No one is bonded. This is nuts, especially the dragons not being able to talk. How are they going to fight? How are they going to coordinate? My mind is reeling.
Well, I want to just clarify something here. You said no one is bonded. They're still bonded. They just can't access the bond. But it reminds me a little bit, honestly, of the serum that they're given in Iron Flame when it cuts off their signets, except this time we see how it also affects the dragons. Before, the dragons weren't a part of the story. We were just getting Riddick, Sawyer, Rhiannon, and Violet's like idea of what like or their point of view. But now we're also seeing how it affects the dragons. And again, I didn't think about the fact that it would also not be able to allow the dragons to speak to one another. Because I guess when you can speak mind to mind because you have magic, there's no need for a language. But it didn't dawn on me that they couldn't like roar to each other and still know what they're talking about.
Do they have an exterior way of communicating, or have they always just been like, it's magic?
That's what I'm saying. My understanding, and unless I missed this and like was reading it wrong, but based on reading this, my understanding is that they don't. They only communicate mind to mind.
Because in a few paragraphs, Tarn goes off to go hunting, and he barks at the rest of the dragons, which they all kind of are like, oh, I guess we're going. But it wasn't like a let's go bark. It's just a attention. Also, so let's come back to that theory you had. The fact that there is no, I know you said that they're still bonded, but there's no bond. What if there also is just like they have a bond to go back to, but realistically, because they are not connected, because they can't channel, they're not bonded here. The magic removes that. And so when you were talking about Mira becoming a griffin rider, but you don't want to see like Teeny or anything go away, obviously, what if she ends up staying across the ocean where there's no magic? And that is how she ends up riding griffins rather than a dragon.
One reason I don't think that that's the case though is because the griffins are also losing, like the griffins aren't bonded to their flyers on these islands either. So her staying on an island wouldn't necessarily mean that she could bond to a griffin.
That's fair. But what if she doesn't bond? What if they just kind of have a mutual, like, I like you?
That's my thing is my thought is that she potentially, because now we know bonding multiple is an option because Violet has 2 dragons. And so if anything, like this honestly feels like I'm just throwing things at the wall to stick. I don't have any like hard evidence on this. I have two thoughts. One is that she might either, in addition to her dragon, bond a griffin for whatever reason that will make more sense later on, or
anything can happen.
Or her and Drake end up being endgame, and then she just is like somehow becomes a big part with the Flyers, even though she's still a writer. She is like lumped in with the Flyers, and that is the representation
she can, like,
of
represent.
the third.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
that makes sense to me. And fate is doing its job, pulling them together. Okay, we'll get to that. So Mira suggests that Violet may have maintained the bond because she bonded two dragons, or perhaps because of Andarna, which I am leaning towards the latter. There's something weird there, though, obviously.
Yeah, I'm really thinking that this has something to do with her second signet.
And
being the... Yeah, well, no, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of annoyed that I think that, because it's nothing like all the signets I wanted her to have wouldn't have anything to do with it. Well, I guess maybe amplifying a little bit, but there's nothing to amplify. So I don't know, like, not really. I don't know. I don't know what I think it means. I think it has something to do with her signet, but I don't know what I think that means.
You saying this puts me back to square one, because since she technically shouldn't have any magic,
exactly,
yet she can still maintain this bond, it throws me back to when she had taken that elixir or whatever it was that cut off her signet prior to it, back when she was getting tortured by Varish, and she saw Liam, because I feel like if she can communicate here, she can communicate there. I don't know. Something's
interesting.
happening. I feel weird about it.
See, that's true. I still... Oh, interesting. That has nothing to do with like talking to the dead. Don't
make sense.
Yeah. I see why you think that, and that is interesting. I don't know if that has anything to do with this, because I don't necessarily think it. Whatever, because you're right. Like, on one hand, she shouldn't even have a signet, because there is no magic. So how could it possibly have anything to do with her second signet?
Unless Andarna's kind somehow made a way for their breed to have magic here, which kept her bond open with her dragons. That's where my mind went.
Yeah, and that's where my mind went too, which is why I'm still open to it being potentially because of her second signet, because there's so much unknown about Andarna's breed that we just don't know what she could do. Like, and so yeah.
Well, I hope we find out soon. Mira says now is the best time to work on testing runes. She hands Violet one that shields her from the sun, but tells her to, keep it on the DL and be discreet about it. And I feel things about this, because this seems pointed, but I don't know how. Maybe Violet will end up forgetting that she has it when they cross back over the ocean, and if she has the power to harness the sky, or what a lot of people think that she has with the lightning, maybe this would mess with her since she's now shielded from the sun, and that would confirm that she has the power of the sky. I don't know.
That's not where that's not where my mind went. My mind went more to, okay, so there's no magic here, but this rune is potentially still, like, it's still working, which means you can imbue things with magic and have magic still be an option on these islands. So I was going more towards how is that going to affect the war if they're able to imbue magic within things. I'm thinking, is that going to be like, we got the warning just in the previous chapter or two that the king is rarity, like, items. Like, okay, so are they going to have to do like a crazy trade with imbued items?
That could be a thing.
That's kind of more where I was thinking with this.
That's better than mine. Yeah, that's more realistic.
No, it's not better.
I'd say it's more realistic to what the situation that's happening. Yeah,
it's less future. It's more like what is going to happen in this moment
right now.
But I like, that's an interesting point to bring up about how it could potentially, if her signet really is powering the sky, not just lightning, how that could potentially affect it. Although, I mean, we've seen runes work in tandem with signets before, so I don't know if that would affect anything, but it is something to note.
If it's not clear, we're just as lost as day one. So here we go, trudging through. Takaros lets the squad know that he has set up a meeting between Halden himself and the Chancellor to the King, because they only want to see aristocrats. Aristocrats. Man, oh man. After Aristocrats came out, it's never been a safe word for me. I cannot.
I default to Aristocrats always.
Yeah, all the time.
Because of how much I loved that movie growing up. Oh,
yep.
I love it. So good.
Okay, in the meantime, the rest of the squad plans to visit the city markets on the DL, and the dragons leave to hunt. Violet, which is where Taryn, just like, yeah, we're going.
Bark.
Yeah. Violet sees Xaden staring out at the beautiful blue sea, and the man is serene.
Oh,
she questions him. I know. It broke my heart a little bit, honestly. It was a happy moment, but it made me so sad.
Agreed. It broke it, but rebuilt it at the same time.
True. She questions him gently, and he responds that there's no power here. There's no lure. He's finally at peace. He doesn't feel like he has to channel anything to save anyone. He's good.
Temptation.
No temptation, which causes Violet to reassess Takaros' offer of joining his court. Knew it would come back.
Yep. I know.
Yep. Oh, like, so cute.
If anything is good, if there's anything, like, it would really go against her. The character Rebecca has spent 2 1/4 of a book building at this point for her to just say screw it and like live here with Xaden. But if anything is going to actually tempt her to do it, it's going to be seeing the relief and worry melt away from the Xaden's face being here.
Yeah. For me, I actually thought of it as a backup. Like, you can still go out and try to fight the Venin and defeat them and win. But if Xaden is still Venin, you never found a cure, come back to this. And he's going to be okay. So I kind of thought, like, wherever we're at, there is always a plan B backup. So I like having a plan B. I feel good about that.
I just don't see her ever putting herself in, yes, Xaden, but like her own happiness and stuff. Like, I could see it being like, okay, Xaden can stay here, but I have to go back.
Because of the bonds with dragons. Yeah. So chapter 23, the header points to a betrayal from Paromish forces to the Crovlin rebels. Rebels? Yeah. Back in 433 AU. Again, nudging to a very strong betrayal theme within this book. So the only part I want to bring up in the header is that they say, there's a saying in Devious, the word is the blood. When they make a trade, broker a deal, it is considered law. I cannot help but wonder what part of the deal the Crovlin rebels did not uphold. Oof.
Oh, I know.
It made me wonder. But not for long, because we get our answer soon. Yeah. The quest squad minus Halden head back into Devious and talk a lot about how beautiful the city is, and this made me so salty. Happy for them, I guess, but salty, because I'm flashback to reality and just a tad ungrateful with how industrial most of our major cities are. Like, it's fine. But, like...
I was waiting for you. I'm like, where are you going with this?
It's me. The idea that we are so car-based... and we have to drive out of our residential neighborhoods to get somewhere commercial like a coffee shop. Why can't we just have bakeries and flower shops and bookstores and all that within our neighborhoods? Everything's walking and bike riding distance. You know what I'm saying?
Like open air markets. We do trades. We do like, you don't even necessarily have to pay for something. You could barter for it. I agree. Well, life feels simpler.
Yeah, maybe. So back to fantasy. I was so mad about that, reading how beautiful that all sounded, and here I am 30 minutes from the nearest grocery store. It's fine. The banter still goes on between Drake and Mira, leading me to think enemies to lovers.
What I just said earlier, me thinks that you're on the same page.
Mira wishes out loud for a communication rune if such a thing exists, but something weird is happening on the sidelines. Xaden is happy?
Wait, we cannot move on from what you just said, the rune thing. It says, what we really need is a freaking communication rune for the others, if such a thing exists. Again, to me, red flag foreshadow that somehow this rune is going to come back into play for communication. I don't know what that necessarily looks like or means, but... if such a thing exists, okay, if it doesn't, they're going to create it. And if it does, it's going to come back into play for me. Anyways, but you're right. Xaden is happy. And we do love that. I love how it becomes a thing that everyone notices and everyone is like, what is wrong with you?
Yes. It's so out of character for him, but it really, 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 truly reminded me of my husband Grant after one margarita. He is happy. He is flirty.
Give me one
He's
margarita.
complimenting people. Oh my gosh,
Give me 2
yes.
margaritas.
He's complimenting people like Dane. He's asking for backstories. He's being a really nice gentleman. It's to the point where Drake is asking Kat, is this the same guy? Which
I know.
whole interaction sent me too. That was crazy.
Agreed.
Xaden leaves with Dane to find out where Norelle, who they're looking for, that lady that Asher pointed to, they're looking for her and trying to find where she may be located in the city. And Riddick comments that maybe this is who Xaden would have been had his father not led the rebellion, landing Xaden in the Riders Quadrant. Made me sad.
I know, that one just
too?
straight broke my heart. Like how you said earlier, how it broke your heart that he was like feeling relieved and free and whatever, unburdened. This is what got me, because what an astute comment, Riddick. Like, truly, but also like probably like the reason he's so hardened is because he has so many people depending on him, and they wouldn't be. I mean, also he knows the truth and there's that, but like there's probably an element of himself that would still feel responsible and everything, just being like a person of leadership. But I really do think a lot of what has made him the way that he is Riddick is right, like it wouldn't be a factor. So who knows how Xaden would be if he didn't have all of that in his past, which is kind of, it's really sad to think about.
It's very sad. Violet also wonders if it wasn't all the tragedies that led them to each other. And if that isn't the age-old question, truly, of just, does everything happen for a reason? Which I think yes. Yeah. I also think yes. Yeah. So suddenly, a man in the city yells, "Firebringers!" and then scurries off, shuffles away. It's clear that these people do not like dragon riders. One might say, bad history. Xaden and Dane come back with Norelle's location. She's a rare bookstore owner. This is my dream job. And Mira, Dane, and Xaden go with Violet into the shop, and the others stand by. Violet again mentions how hot and stifling it is, especially inside the bookstore with no air circulation. And I know maybe this is like a point to Indarna, a point to her, a point to something, but I was just thinking selfishly, I would actually die. I nearly pass out in 80-degree weather. I could not imagine this.
Well, and you know, maybe this is just me, I don't know, but there was something interesting about the way that this bookstore was described. It was floor to ceiling windows, like so much natural light, like, and it specifically said like in on the books. So the fact that it talks about how hot it is in there, plus like the sunlight beaming on these books, I was kind of surprised that it was written like that because of how much emphasis they put on like the archives and how like the air is sealed shut for the preservation of the books. I'm like, wouldn't the sunlight fade it? Like, I don't think you really want that. Like, that doesn't feel ideal for books, but it doesn't really go into that. It just kind of describes unless it comes back later, I don't know, but like it doesn't at this point in this conversation. It's just described.
Are we digging too deep? I'm curious. Is 100%. There magic warding these books somehow, some way?
I feel like they'd be able to feel it if there was.
I would think so too, but
I don't know.
Maybe not.
But I think we are digging too deep into this because I really think it was just written like that to describe the beauty of it. But that
logistically,
I thought about that.
Logistically,
I'm like, this doesn't make sense.
The binding would melt. The pages would be tattered. No, what a mess.
The
logistically,
ink gone. No. You can't even read the books.
So we don't get her name for a second, and so I reference her as the salt and pepper haired lady, but she is sitting inside, and upon the mention of Norelle, 2 assailants charge from the back shelves. It's not really a fight though, which I really enjoyed this section of the story, because between Xaden, Mira, and Violet, these bads are cooked within a few seconds. I'm really updating my slang with the Gen Z.
I know. I want that on a shirt too.
Mira asks the lady
are cooked.
if she's protecting something or if she just hates writers, when suddenly an old lady walks down the stairs, and she's the S&P lady's mom. Old. The lady is 97. Salt and pepper.
S&P lady's mom. I'm just loving the way you're describing this. I want you to just summarize every book for me.
Thanks. So the old lady, 97, she's Norelle. She takes one look at Violet's hair and says, "You must be Asher Sorrengail's daughter, here to collect the books he wrote for you." And to that I say, HYB, which is slang for hell yeah, brother. Chapter 24.
Yeah, brother.
You can adopt that one too.
Oh,
We're gonna have
absolutely.
a lot of shirts made after this.
So many shirts. So little time.
All right. Last chapter, friends. Stay with us.
Oh.
Norelle is Norelle is a to-the-point lady, directing Xaden to put the armchair back in its place and like pick her grandkids off the ground that he just beat up. And this reminds me.
Also, I love the fact that the quote-unquote assailants, this is a family operation. Those are her grandkids.
Business.
This is the daughter of S&P. Which we at this point we know her name. It's Leona now, so we can call. But I like S&P lady better. And I don't even remember the names of her grandkids because I picture them being like, we get their names, but they're just so weak and worthless that I don't even remember.
Oh, they were doing their best. And honestly, we find out why they attacked, and I was like, that's so honorable. And I had more respect for them after that. But we'll get there.
Agreed.
So she directs Xaden, like, put that armchair back in its place, pick my grandkids up. And it reminds me of my ama, who is so direct and to the point and just no nonsense. And when she was younger, there was like, she joined this company and it was full of a bunch of like mostly men. I think she joined as a secretary, and one of the guys puts up a Playboy calendar, and my ama is just this little Chinese lady. She walks up and she goes, "No, ugly, take it down." And he was like, "Yes, ma'am." And from then on, no nonsense, clean environment, clean office.
That's
one wanted
amazing.
to disrespect her. Yeah. Loved it.
No, ugly. Take it down.
Take it down.
I just like the bold no, ugly.
I aspire to have that confidence. So it turns out that the assailants, like we said, weren't protecting the books from just anyone, but they were protecting the books from any writers that weren't Violet. Oh la la, what a twist.
What the Which then that makes me okay, so like obviously we know her dad was doing like secretive stuff, but that makes me concerned that other people might have been in on the secretive stuff, which leads me back to the theory that I had that he didn't die from heart issues, that he was killed.
Oh, I absolutely think he was killed. You're right on that one. I don't even need a book to tell me. In my heart of hearts, that's how he died.
As far as we know, he died from heart problems, so technically it's not confirmed.
Not buying it. You could end the series with he died of heart problems. Not buying it.
Yeah, right.
You may quote me on that. So Norelle says to her daughter Leona, "I'm 93. Oh, 93, not 97. I'm 93, not dead. Or what do you Amaryllis say? I have not yet met Malik." Okay, so what's Amaryllis? Tell me.
Violet goes, "My brow furrows at the unknown term, Amaryllis." And I
Amaryllis.
that.
There's a country song with Amaryllis in it, I think.
Oh,
anyways.
I wouldn't know.
It's Darius
but that
Rucker,
is something that I'm like, this is certainly not anything we've ever heard, so I'm locking that in a box because this feels very foreshadowy, and we will keep going.
The part after this, though, is what sent me even further. Violet responds, "Deverelli don't worship gods." And this conversation piqued my interest. I'm starting to lean towards and put your foil hats on with me, you guys, the theory that the gods are actually just extremely powerful wielders who are now immortal, maybe Venin. And things got mixed up in the text over time, lost in translation. And now hear me out, is the reason Deverelli don't worship the gods of those in Promio, Navarre, Corden, all that area, because they don't have magic here. And so that kind of situation does not apply to them. That threat doesn't apply. Something to think about. The next part sends me to the moon, and I am determined to figure out how to make a reel about this before the week ends. Norelle looks at Xaden and is like, tall, dark, and handsome, just like Asher said you would be, Dane Atos.
I know.
I spit on the beverage.
What made it even better was that Dane was just in my mind. Dane is just slightly off to the side, right next to her.
Yeah.
I mean, meep. Oh my gosh, that was so funny.
It
sent me to the moon.
Again, Rebecca, what are you doing? This is so dirty. I love it. I think it's so funny. She's got a good sense of humor, this writer. I'm telling you.
I know. Okay, also, once again, in this conversation, there's another nod to marriage, though, because Xaden says, did you, maybe you didn't pick up on this. He says,
I didn't pick this up.
Just like it's gone for the last 18 months, Xaden answers, losing any and all trace of the niceties that he had shown Dane an hour ago. Everyone assumes she'll wind up with you, but it's my last name she ends up wearing on her flight jacket.
Okay, yes, I thought this was also a nod to marriage. I did pick this one up. But then Violet says that was only once or twice if you count the time I came back from, I don't know where he was, Samara or something. So he's specifically referencing, well, he's not. She thinks, actually, Melissa, you are on the right track.
That's what I'm saying.
He's not necessarily referencing those 2 times that she was wearing his jacket, but she thinks he is.
Yes, he's saying in the future. That's just Violet's response. Yeah. Exactly.
Ooh, well, and then with a twist.
And I like that Dane goes, you don't even wear your last names on your jackets, because obviously that's not the point. Like, Dane and Violet were on the same. The quote? Dane said, glad to see you're feeling like yourself again. Dane leans back against the counter, but we don't have last names on our flight jackets. And then, but Dane goes, and yet you get the effing point.
My favorite. The best response, really. So the mix-up is obviously corrected, and Norelle says that she will release the books to Violet. She'll release the books to Violet if she answers her riddles 3. Violet recognizes...
Are you going to give us riddles with how you're saying this? The riddles 3.
Violet recognizes that the rare item she possesses is her mind, and she is ready to answer. Question number 1, what's the title of the manuscript? Easy. Lightweight, no reaction. Question 2, why did the Crowlin uprising fall apart? What was the betrayal that caused the Peromish to slaughter them? And I love this because, again, we just read that header, and so I'm curious. Yep. We get our answer. Turns out they promised dragons that they couldn't deliver. Once again, the nerve of humans.
The nerve. The honest-to-God nerve that they thought they could trade in dragons.
You can't see me over if you're just listening, but my eyes are into my brain. They're rolling so hard.
They rolled so hard that I couldn't even see the pupil.
The whites of my eyes only. Violet explains this to Dane, and they realize that the Crowlish were hunting Feathertails. They remember Asher basically explaining this in somewhat hidden code to them when they were children. Mm-hmm. And question number 3, why did Violet end things with Halden? Loved her answer here, which just ensured that she knew her own value. And Norelle respected that, and so did I. So, here we are, the last little bit. Things took a tiny turn here, and I'm glad they did, because it made for a juicier plot, if that's even possible. But it also scratched an itch for me. Mira says she'll carry the books for Violet, and kind of pointedly says, don't worry, I won't read them. And Violet wonders, and that made me sad for Mira in that instance, because I'm like, why is she left out of this? Like, she was Asher's kid too. And Violet says, Well,
I was going to say too, like, even in the interaction with Norelle, Mira, I can't remember exactly what happens, but it's something like, oh, I'll take them. And Norelle is even like, these aren't for you. Like, right. And that I also felt for Mira. And honestly, this feels like something that's going to come back up again too. Not even necessarily the books themselves or anything, but the feeling of betrayal that Mira like feels from this situation.
Yeah, maybe. I could see it. What really is a different dynamic in this specific situation is that Mira isn't kind of like a wimpy, whiny sibling that's like, I should have everything too. Why does she get it? Like, Mira is so independent, helpful, holds her own, like a good fighter, and defends Violet. There's no animosity. Just about to say,
she's always in Violet's corner. They are like thick as thieves. So, because I didn't get the sense that she was mad at Violet. I felt like she was upset with their dad, and felt hurt by the fact that the dad only gave it to Violet. Well, I agree. I am petty and all those things when it comes to my siblings' relationship. So I know that I would be feeling that same way.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but for me, it wouldn't be with my siblings. It would be with my dad.
That's fair. That's really fair. And I totally understand that on a personal level as well.
Yeah.
So Violet wonders, why was Dad so adamant that only I collect these books? And this is answered quickly when Norelle says that everyone has a part to play in what's coming. Basically, Asher took over giving Violet his mission, but Lilith was the one who kind of raised Mira more. And Norelle says, I wonder what legacy you've inherited. Yes, 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 yes. Can't wait to read this.
Griffin.
Something good. Something good.
Honestly.
And to bring us back down from this high, every tome Asher left is also passcode locked, and I doubt the answer for all of them is Aimser. So.
I'm very curious to see what that is going to be. Because
I know.
I want to say, I don't remember if we gave an exact number, but for whatever reason, I'm feeling like there were 6 books. Do we remember there being a number 6?
I think it's 6 tomes, yeah.
Okay. Oh man, 6 riddles? Yeah, right. I can barely figure out one. I will say I did figure this one out, but I second guessed myself so much that I was wrong still.
I know. Knowing me, I would have typed Halden into that freaking book and ink would have gone everywhere and the thing would have combusted
We never
in my
would have
hands.
known.
Never would have made it to Devrelli. Would have been in the South. Outrageous.
Norelle?
Okay.
Who's that?
Would have let everyone down. We end this chapter with Violet in her and Xaden's room taking a bath, watching the breeze roll in with the sunset, and this is the definition of bliss. Xaden walks in and is immediately like, I'm toast, and his mouth crashes onto hers, and that is where we finish today. Yeah.
I also want to note that he walked in wearing just a towel.
Ooh.
That's all. That's all I need. That needs to be said. That is all that we need.
Oh, there was more to that.
No, I don't need to say anything more because that in itself is a full sentence.
That really is it. And finally, you guys, we have yet another author interview just because we want to make sure that while we enjoy these mainstream books and they're so much fun and they're so good, we do want to let everybody know what else is out there just in case you're looking for something fresh and new that you might not have otherwise heard of. So today we are talking to Brooklyn Quintana. She is the author of the Phineas Fogg series, 2 books, 9 of Swords, and Blood in the Water. So stay tuned for the interview.
And we're here with Brooklyn. Brooklyn, why don't you go ahead and start by telling our audience a little bit about yourself and what inspired you for this series?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you guys so much for having me. I definitely appreciate it. My name is Brooklyn Quintana. I am the author of the Phineas Fogg series. There's 2 books currently out, and they are tropical fantasy adventure, and then book 2 kind of verges a bit more into surreal horror-themed fantasy adventure. Still tropical, but now it's like it got a little scarier. Things got worse for Finn and his friends.
Okay.
I love that. It's an interesting genre. I've never heard like something described as tropical fantasy then cut to tropical horror fantasy. What was like the inspiration behind that? Is it because you saw like a lack of books, like genre or books in that space, or is it just something that like felt, I don't know, like home? I don't know how that, but you know, what was the inspiration behind that?
I so wish that I could say that it was like I was doing analytics on the genre and so there was a need for it, but that is unfortunately, that's not the case. I really believe in writing books that you yourself want to read. And growing up, I really liked the Jumanji series, and I really liked like fantasy and knights. So like the impetus was like, yeah, but like what if knights, but in Jumanji kind of vibes, and also make them like children. So that kind of like all came together, and it was like, it's just, I like refer to the island that they go to school on as Nightmare Island, because that is what it is. Like, they're not having a good time at school. It's not whimsical Harry Potter fun. Like, it's a rough go of it. There's a jungle out there that'll kill you. Everything's enchanted. So I just thought that'd be a really fun book to read. Yeah. So it was the book I wrote. And then for book 2, I love horror movies. Like, that's how I unwind at the end of the day. So then it was just like, well, that's a fun genre thing you don't see a lot, especially with younger protagonists. Like, let's just make it miserable for them.
Oh my gosh. Actually, growing up, I also love horror. And I, as a kid, loved the books that would give me like the creeps in any fashion. I think one of my favorite, I think we talked about it on the podcast, but one of my favorite kids' books was the girl that had the ribbon tied around her neck. And then one day she
Oh
pulled
my
it off
God,
and her head rolled off.
yes.
Yeah. So, and then like your books they're YA, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like you don't see a lot of horror in YA. It's a lot of like fantasy, romantasy, thriller, like that kind of thing, but not a lot of horror. So that's really cool. I like that you added that.
Yeah, I think it like when you add things in or you write about things that you're really passionate about, it comes through in the writing. And even if people don't necessarily like it, like your excitement about it, I think kind of
Exactly.
draws people in to like, well, I'll give it a
Yeah.
try kind of vibe.
Totally.
Yeah.
I totally
Love
get that.
that.
So when did you first realize that you wanted to be a writer?
I guess like as like a professional, I was like 22, but in life, I always was writing. So probably in elementary school, I was always writing short stories. And then my dad told me like, if you're gonna write, stories and books and things, you should like try and actually enjoy reading. So they
Mm-hmm.
kind of went hand in hand in elementary school. I learned that I liked writing, and that's when I also figured out that I liked reading.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have a question. So you mentioned that your books are kind of like a crossover between Harry Potter and the Hunger Games. What are your favorite books to read that kind of inspired the series, the Phineas Fogg series?
So it's gonna sound cliche to say Harry Potter, but that's very true. I
Yeah.
don't know if you see all of the merchandise that I
Yeah.
made with big Potter hat. I like on this side have a whole Slytherin just shelf of green.
It's
So yeah,
amazing.
definitely Harry Potter. And then weirdly enough, I'm actually not a big fantasy reader.
Mm.
So I really like nonfiction books. So like a lot of historical texts that I've read, specifically like on ancient Rome and like the antiquities times and Greece, really inspired a lot of aspects of the story, at least for book one.
I know you mentioned that you're not a huge fantasy reader, but have you read any like historical fantasies? Like I know Divine Rivals was like a pretty popular one the last couple of years that is more like historical fantasy. It's okay to say no, but I just was curious since you said there are a lot of like nonfiction historical stuff inspired a lot of aspects of this. I was curious if you've read a little bit in that like subgenre.
I haven't. It's kind of like embarrassing because I definitely feel like it's something I would really enjoy. And I
No,
actually
it's
own a lot
fine.
of them. I own so many historical fantasy books, it's not even
Yes.
funny. And then I'm just like, I look at them and I'm like, yeah, I'll get to those, and just haven't.
Yep.
So eventually.
That is the story of my life. I get that. There's a sale. I need it. But my list is so long of books that we're just going to tuck that away and get to it eventually. And then eventually still hasn't come yet. So I feel that on a molecular level.
I understand entirely, trust
Yes.
me.
Without giving away too much, are you able to kind of get into what the overarching? Oh gosh, overarching commit plot of Nine of Swords is about?
Yeah, so each book, like, your classic fantasy series has like a contained plot within it, and then there's the overarching plot. So the overarching plot is very much something people keep saying something is coming and like the end of days is near type of deal. So think less chosen one vibes, more harbinger of doom type vibes with the
Okay.
story. And then, yeah, so it's very much like something is coming. We don't know what it is. Everybody's super vague about it intentionally. And like when they talk to Finn, they remain talking vague and he calls it out. He's like, you could just, like, just tell us. And everybody's like, no, 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 no. It'd be bad if you found out details. And we all know it's never bad when you give people details.
Yes.
So like everybody around Finn, as a callback to my love of Harry Potter, is essentially Dumbledoring him through the entire thing. Like, there's a vague problem, but we're not going to talk about details. You don't need to know. And he's like, I do need to know.
Yes.
I love
Dumbledoring
that.
him.
Yeah, it's a
I'm
verb
gonna
now.
only ever I was just about to say only ever using Dumbledore as a verb moving forward. How did your personal influence or experience influence the plot of these characters?
I think there's a lot of bits and pieces of me thrown into each character to try and like make them feel like they're real
Yeah.
people living in this environment. So for like the main character of Phineas, he likes naps. So that's like his deal. He also like truly hates the ocean. And it's bad because he's going to school on a tropical island and like they have sailing classes. But this child he's very much like me. He's like, there are sharks in there. I'm not getting in that water. So there's like those aspects of me. And then Finn's raging disinterest for solving mysteries is also very much me. Like, I don't care about drama unless people give me like, you know, every bit of it and I don't have to piece anything together. So when Finn's handed, you know, a plot point and they're like, oh, here's a mystery. He's like, no, I don't care. And just like leaves it.
That's amazing.
And I feel like it's relatable because he's like a 12-year-old boy. He's not going to, again, another callback. He's not going to like find out who Nicholas Flamel is. Like, he's just like, no, I don't care. Yeah, if it's important, somebody else will do it for me and tell me. Because, you know, he's a prince, so he has that mentality. So it seemed like a reasonable, like, personality trait to build into him. And then his cousin, who's his main rival, Prince Holland, he's very much over competitive and cannot relax, which is another aspect of me. Like, if we're playing Monopoly, it's to the death. And that's just like Holland's way of approaching every single thing is like, if I don't win, the world will implode and everything is a disaster. So those kind of aspects, and then like other characters throughout definitely have little bits of pieces of me, but those are like the main two, you know, the protagonist, and probably Holland could be counted as a deuteragonist, who have a lot of personality traits pulled directly from me, just like my chill side with Finn and then like my tightly wound, we cannot lose side in Holland.
I love that. Okay? That, I feel like that's also a slight nod to the Horcrux situation where it's like you just kind of put a piece of you in all these different things.
I didn't
like
even
kind of
think
a piece
about
of
it
different
yet. These
characters.
are my Horcruxes. Don't tell anybody about it.
I love that. Okay, so wait, you mentioned the sailing classes. What other classes can we find from this school? I'm so curious.
The school is set up, I guess I'm going to give you context so you understand what's going on. So the school is set up where you go to school from 12 to 18, and after your second year, you compete in this like tournament where all the professors and like your family and all the other students and the older upperclassmen watch you. And at the end, they decide based on the last 2 years what you've excelled at, what military branch you're going to be placed into. And then for the next 4 years, you only train in that branch.
Gotcha.
So something terrible is going on, so they have to accelerate it for Finn and Holland's year. So they're going to compete after only 1 year. So they have to like put their all into classes. So they have sailing lessons, archery, close quarter combat, medical classes that you never see, but they talk about it. And then the main class with like the lunatic instructor is called survival strategies and tactics, but everybody refers to it as crisis aversion because he just gives you like these scenarios like, okay, you're in war and you've been separated from your regiment and you have a broken leg and you're dying. What do? Here's a stick. And then they like send these children out.
Stick.
And like all the kids are like, we don't know what to do. Like, it's our first day. So that's kind of that class. And he's a lunatic. And then, you know, at the end of the year, they have to use all of those skills that they've honed to do this week-long tournament where they hop across the archipelago islands and try to not die and then make it to essentially a coliseum. So that's kind of your Hunger Games aspect. It's not a fight to the death because that would defeat the point. You'd kill everybody in the military before they made it. But it is a fight to prove like who is, you know, the most resilient, the toughest, the strongest. So there's that aspect. And I liked the idea of like West Point, but make it tropical and medieval.
That's
I
amazing.
Love that.
I know, me too.
So good.
So I like how like unique this sounds. What was the central theme that you wanted to explore in this story?
I think definitely for book one, the central theme is like finding yourself.
Yeah.
Because Finn spent so much of his life isolated with just his sister, dad, and grandpa, and, you know, didn't even know the rest of the royal family. So he didn't have a sense of who he was, not only in the hierarchy, but like he's never had to interact with other kids really. And Prince Holland has been in the castle with the royal family his whole life. He's never left the capital, so he's never had to interact. And even though they're also the children of nobility who obviously are not, you know, struggling or anything like peasants would, they're both thrown into a very similar situation where they have to acclimate to new surroundings and not have people do things for them. And the whole impetus behind their training is like on their first day, their version of a headmaster called the Lord Paramount tells them like, we're not going to use your full names. We're only using your first names and no titles because you have to prove it and earn your spot. And you can't just like rest on the laurels of your family and your rank and everything. So Finn and Holland really have to adjust and find who they are as people and what they excel at, what they like, and like their own personalities separate from who they're expected to be in their family.
Yeah.
And then book 2 is definitely a book that deals a lot more with the aftermath of book 1 and loss and grief and how different people process like horrible traumatic things happening to them at a very, very young age.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. Wow, I love that.
With the second book, the horror theme, are there... I mean, I feel like you can't say jump scares for books because that doesn't translate, but like jump scare situations?
I mean, I don't know if I would refer to the chapter I'm thinking about as a jump scare situation so much as these poor children. They're like 14 at this point, waking up in the middle of the night and just absolute chaos has erupted. And like in the previous chapter, it was like a cozy, our friend is hurt in the infirmary, friendship is magic type chapter. And then the very next chapter is like, all hell has broken loose, and you don't have like a preparation between chapters for the juxtaposition of like friendship is magic to, oh God, there's so much blood going on. So I think that's like maybe the closest you get to a jump scare, but it's probably one of my most favorite chapters to not only write, but it was a fun time to reread it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So can you describe your writing process? Like, do you have a specific routine when you sit down to write, or is it just like whatever comes to you? How do you, like, when you were writing this series, is there anything that you did like every single time?
So truly, I wish that I could say that I have a routine because this is my job and it is my career, and I'm on book 3, so you think I'd have it down by now, but that would be a lie. For book 1, I kind of I went into it like all vibes, no thoughts, let's go.
Yeah.
And then book 2, too many thoughts, couldn't like compile them together, so it was a lot. I didn't write it in order like I did book 1, and what I learned from that is that's a terrible decision. You cannot, or at least I can't write books out of order, because then when I was going back and editing, I was like, oh, well, now this doesn't make any sense. So I had to like add new chapters and rearrange things. That was a living nightmare. So for book 3, I think my routine has become a reflection of what I've learned from book 1 and 2. I have copious notes upon notes upon notes, like a crazy person almost. There's sticky notes. I write notes to myself as if like I'm a different person. I'm like, Brooklyn, you have to remember this. And I'm like, okay, we're it's both me.
Dear
so there's
future
just like
me.
notes and notes and notes, and it's highlighted and annotated. It looks like 4 people have gone through this notebook. But it's definitely been helping me because it keeps me focused on things that like plot points and what I'm going to do next. And then I had just reread books 1 and 2, so all of those notes when I'm like, okay, this is what I want in this chapter, and then I'll have like little notes on the side, and I'm like, remember in book 1 when this happened, and we can tie this back in. It definitely is like I'm solving a mystery, but I'm the one who also committed the crime that needs solving. So it's my own little crazy person, like pins and needle and red rope attaching everything type deal going on. But it's working out so far for book 3. I don't know if this is what you would call a routine, though.
It's very
what a neat
Charlie
process,
Day.
Though.
And that was exactly what I was picturing. Charlie from It's Always Sunny with my little friends.
With that eye twitch and the pointing, and I love it.
The amount of Mountain Dew I am drinking, the eye twitch is going on. And I'm like pointing at things, and I'm like, and this is what's going to happen. But I'm also just explaining it to myself, which just kind of adds to the drama of it all.
I feel like you could like do a movie scene of that where it's like real, like the camera's really close to you, and you're like, and this, and then it pans out, and it's just you talking to yourself.
I would actually request is you set your phone up and time lapse you just writing, and I want to see this like in, it's like, what is it, fast motion, all of you talking to yourself, writing things down, like pointing at things.
Exactly. Be like, oh, remember this, and then I just write it down. Mountain Dew's just everywhere.
It's sloshing. That's amazing.
No, I've honestly always wondered, like, do authors go back and reread their first book, like, constantly and then take notes of, like, oh, this happened, so I should have this tie into here? Or is it just like I remember this happening because it's basically the book's like my baby. I know what happened, and so I'm just going to write through, you know?
I think it's definitely a bit of both. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
would say 90% of it's just housed in
Yeah.
the circus that's going on in my brain all the time. So I remember it. And my friends and my boyfriend will tell me, they're like, it's so weird that that's just going on all the time in your head. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just pull this
Yeah.
information out and write it. But then when I reread it, it's the most embarrassing thing because I'll be surprised by my own plot twists as if I wasn't the one who wrote it. I'm like, oh, that's so good. And then I
Oh, I
take
love
notes.
that.
I was rereading book two, and before I had sent it to my editor, I had read it 11 times. So me and book two are
Yeah.
very familiar with one another. And then I start rereading it to write book three, subplot that I forgot about, apparently never wrote down in my notes, and was surprised by it. And I was like, oh, well, that works out really nicely because I knew how it was going to go. And I was like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
we were doing this for a reason when we wrote book two, you idiot. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a bit of both. Like, most of it's in my head, but I haven't memorized it word for word. So, like, finite details that you pick
Yeah.
up on the mystery, I'm like, oh, right. That's where we were going.
Right.
We should tie that
Yeah.
all back in.
Man, writers are a
subconscious
different
is-
breed.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Just so creative. I love that. Okay, so you talked about your writing book three. How many books do you think you're going to end with this entire universe?
There's going to be 9 of them. Definite.
That's
My
amazing.
There's
goodness.
going to be 9.
Listeners,
That's
you have
awesome.
the chance to get in on the low level. There's only 2 so far. You can catch up so fast. 9? That is incredible.
It's a very thematically important number through the series. And obviously, the first book is called Nine of Swords. So
Okay.
the
That
number
makes
9
sense.
comes up very frequently. So it makes sense.
that's
And then
awesome.
the other day, this is going to sound like I'm a crazy person. I outlined and mapped out a prequel trilogy. And
I
the
love
look
that.
that was the look my friends gave me. They're like, you haven't even finished this one. What are you doing? And I was like, yeah, but look how cool this would be, guys. It would be like The Mummy, but make it medieval.
That's
And
amazing.
everybody was like, please just finish the first 9 first, and then you can go do this. I'm like, yeah.
No, not me.
I'm on it.
Take a pause, write
Yeah.
the prequel 3, and then back to the. I don't know, but I'm
No,
so
we
like
can't
here,
George
here,
R.
here,
R.
here.
Martin people. Can't
Exactly.
just stop midway.
No. No one will forgive you.
That is so good.
Yeah, what if the book series like really takes off and I'm like, sorry guys, I'm doing a prequel right now. I'll get back to it in a minute. I'm like, that's
Yeah,
just
no.
mean at that point.
That's fair.
is.
But if the roles were reversed, Brooklyn, I fear I would not care. I'd be like, hold your horses. I'm writing a prequel.
Here's the
series.
I'm
problem.
doing something.
The
doing
trilogy
something.
can't come out until at least after book 4 because
Yeah.
it has a big reveal
sense.
of the major plot of book 3 and 4. So then it
Okay.
would
Wow.
have to be timed to come
Okay.
out like, yeah.
Okay,
I love
yeah.
how your mind works
You're right.
and how you I've said this before. I'm not a writer and I don't ever plan to, and that's fine. This is not me self-deprecating or belittling myself. I don't feel the need to, but I love talking to people who like this is what you do, not just professionally, but it's just like how your mind works. Like I couldn't fathom having an idea and being like, well, this is going to be in 6 books from now. And then being like, I have to fill all of these books before that happens. I would be like, well, this is going to happen on the next page, because once I start thinking about something, I cannot possibly think about anything else. So I would have 0 ideas of what to do until that point happens.
I
So
think
I
that's
love, like,
one
hearing
of the
that.
hardest parts of it is
Yeah.
that like, so I had a reviewer be like, oh well, I didn't like this chapter because it felt out of place and unnecessary. And I'm like, yeah, but in 4 books it's gonna be necessary.
Yeah.
You
Oh my
just
gosh,
don't know
yes.
what I know. And then again, I sound like I'm a crazy person. It's just like, just wait, it's gonna come back, I promise.
Ugh,
Yes.
I feel like we run into that all the time as readers, where Melissa and I
Yeah.
are constantly like, a plot hole, we're smart. And then book 2, it's like that plot hole was pivotal to the entire storyline. You
Yeah.
should have, it wasn't a plot hole.
They just wanted
I've
you to
learned-
think it was a plot hole.
Exactly.
Yes, I
yeah.
have learned to trust the process. At this point now, what I'm saying is, oh, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to put that in a little box and we're going to revisit that at the end because I guarantee it will make sense before then.
We've been taught patience. Yes.
Yes, we have.
I like that. As
Patience
an
and
author,
understanding.
I like to hear it. I will tell you, if you read my books, you're going to have to be very patient. Because for every like 10
Noted.
questions you get in book one, maybe one is answered by the end of the story. And then you also get more questions.
Love that.
You've got to
Love
work
that
for it.
me.
I see.
I gotta get you reading all 9. You know?
Yeah.
I can't give you everything at once.
That's so fair. And the prequels.
It is.
What will the theme of book 3 be?
Book 3 has a very specific, very different feel than book 1 and 2 because there's a time skip.
Okay.
So now you're dealing with a 16-year-old Holland and Finn.
I love that you grew up with them.
I know.
Now the something bad has happened. So now it's not that vague Dumbledore-y, ooh, something's coming. It's like, it is here, and when book 3 happens, you are very much thrown into the middle of it, and you don't have context for what has happened, essentially. So you are discovering, along with one of the characters, which is a key plot point, what has transpired over 2 years to result in the devastation that is going on. And the theme, I think, would very much be like family. Like they're almost like a little mafia together because Finn, his sister, Holland, and his brother have become very more insular than they were before and very much have developed a us against the world, screw 'em kind of personality, very scorched earth. Like if you're against us, we just will kill you. And that is the mentality they are carrying into book 3, and everybody around them is like, temperance is a good thing. Yeah. And they're like, no, we've gone far past temperance now.
Can't relate.
It is the time for just devastating other people. So book 3's vibe is very much, and like the theme is family and how different personalities interact with one another and growing up alongside other people, which, as an aside, I'm an only child, so this has been like a character study and with like what people with siblings do and how they interact with people. So it's very much like, they're growing up, they're in this terrible situation, and they have now created a healthier, not very close-knit bond together and have to go solve the problem.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I like how, like, it seems, you mentioned that they were 12, 14 in the first book?
They're 12 in book 1, 12 and 13, and then 13, 14 in book 2.
Yeah, and the theme to go with book 1, I feel like is so age appropriate, of finding yourself and finding like who you are in this world. And then they move up and they have new problems that might be relatable for people who are growing. And then now with the found family, and maybe you're a teenager and you're kind of angsty, which is what kind of sounds like is happening here. They can kind of relate to that in your books as they grow with the characters. I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the grow up with Harry aspect of Harry Potter.
Yes.
The very much difference with the Phineas Fogg series is that the books start out long, like book 1's 770 pages, and even though like Finn himself is 12 at the beginning, he's 12 at the beginning of book 1, he is in, because it's like, medieval, they were thrown into situations that we would not put 12-year-olds in now. So he's in very adult situations where you have to learn the concept of people around you are inevitably going to die, and because you are the prince, they will be dying for you, so you have to make it worth their sacrifice. So those like heavy themes on a kid, which makes like the book skew older a little bit. So they'd be like, perfectly appropriate for a 12-year-old to read, because I would say they rate like PG-13 if you had to rate it. But it does have those like darker, slightly like more mature themes of like family secrets and why you hide things from your kids, and that adults in your life are going to make mistakes for you. And, I hate always having my callbacks to Harry Potter, but it was such a pivotal series in my life growing up. So whereas Harry kind of had that situation where he's like bucking authority and he's going to do it himself and like he doesn't need the adults, Finn is very much the opposite as a protagonist. He doesn't shirk authority because he's grown up in an authoritative position. So he looks to his father and his grandfather and his mentor, Mariah, where he asks them like, well, what am I supposed to be doing? What should I do now? And it's very much the opposite, where Dumbledore's like, you need to listen. Like Finn's family's like, you need to come up with ideas for yourself and like find your own way and stop asking us to do things for you. So it's a very opposite protagonist problem of where he has had his family, and even though he has to find himself, he also has to learn to do things on his own and to figure things out and to stand on his own 2 feet and to stop having people help him.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I love that. Well, one last question before we wrap this up. Where can our audience find these books?
They are available on Barnes & Noble online, Amazon Prime, and most online book retailers. And if you're in the state of Florida, they are coming to a couple of small book retailers around Tampa and Orlando. So hopefully those announcements will be up on my site by the summer once all of those deals are signed.
Yay!
Awesome.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing a piece of you with us. I am very excited to start reading these books. I'm excited for the next 7 that are going to come out and the prequel. So we'll be with you for the long haul. But thank you again. I know our audience is going to enjoy this, and we've had a great time talking about your books.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It was so fun, and I love getting to answer questions that I don't get all the time. So thank you for letting me indulge in chatting about these things that I really am passionate about. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah,
Love
of
it.
course.
Oh, and last thing, if you are listening, we will link these books in our Instagram. So head over there to find them. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. We will see you next week for our next installment of Onyx Storm. And thank you again, Brooklyn, for being here.
Yes.